Good morning to each and everyone. Today, we are going to discuss about the topic reading and writing practice. So what is reading? Reading is a distinction needs to be made between the intensive and extensive reading. Intensive reading, where the student is expected to read short passage. In short, the learner uh, should be read a short passage in order to have to understand the main topic. Extensive reading, where the student reads to understand the main idea of a passage. So therefore, the student also needs to read main idea in order to have also a understand what the context all about. Reading passage can be used for intensive study in class, for introducing and consolidating structure and vocabulary, as a springboard for other classroom activities, to increase pupils' passive vocabulary and for pleasure. So reading also is a important part of the teaching or the learners to have a idea or a vocabulary as well. If reading is a set of homework, it is the most effective if you check on it in class. It serves two principal purposes. A. The acquisition of new passive vocabulary and idiom. B. Accustoming students to read fast and pleasure in English while they absorb new language forms as they go along. So reading also is important in homework activities to gain more knowledge, vocabulary, and comprehension. If your aim is acquisition of vocabulary and idiom, train your student to use vocabulary effectively. So, most important to have a idea or vocabulary, you need to give a student a vocabulary, a dictionary in order to have more knowledge effectively. And the second is, if your aim is to get students to read fast with pleasure, then give them which is easy. So learners should be read short passage in order to have a idea or knowledge what the context is about.
In continuation of our topic about reading and writing practice. When we say writing, writing is a skill with rules and structure. Writing may be the most complex process that we expect our student to learn. And also, reading and writing also need to be practiced as skills. So teachers and students learning to write in English have a number of tools they can use to support this process. The main problem here is to get your student used to English ways of expressing themselves. Thus, the first problem here is Spanish or Italian students tend to write long flowery sentences with an emphasis on resonance and style rather than a context. Second, the French have a problem with the paragraphs with Arab and Iranian students. Make sure the write is clearly. Third, get your student accustomed to writing in short sentence, each ending with a full stop. French and other nationalities would tend to bridge different sentences with a comma. There are various ways students can improve their writing skills. There are online courses they can take And they also have the option to take up traditionally classes offered by local schools or tutorial centers. Teach them how to join sentence with conjunction such as so that, while, then, and etc. And make sure of spelling by getting them to write out misspelled words. So here are mass words what you need to write. First is letters, second is narrative, third is reported speech, fourth is fulfilling, fifth is descriptions, and lastly, note taking. Be meticulous about spelling and punctuation because and get them to copy out words they have misspelled. So, for instance, a teacher can begin with an asking to simply copy a statement with written in the English, starting with a simpler statement and moving to the more complex. This can help develop a familiarity with the language while building confidence in writing itself. So you should remember that students should practice writing daily even if they have make mistakes. As long as these mistakes are corrected and they will become a better writers in the future.
Good morning, everyone. By the way, I am Apple Jenny Alvarez, and now I will continue discussing about reading and writing practice. So under this is the exercises. All textbooks have exercises, some good and some not so good. In general, they are similar to oral exercises which have been outlined in this book. Substitution, transformation, question and answer, etc. Many teachers are opposed to exercises which involve filling in a blank, words, or changing the tense of a verb. However, these have a function as they make students aware of the way language works. Ideally, though, they should have been placed in a scenario that is as with oral practice. It's important to keep it real. Make exercises relevant to your students' requirements if you are going to create them. If possible, relate them to images. Make them follow the same patterns as you did in class, and allow students to exercise their inductive reasoning skills. To take simple examples, first is if you want them to be familiar with numbers, give them some which produce the numbers you want them to write. And the second one is if you want them to describe what people wear, get them to describe what students in class were wearing. And the third, if you are going over furniture with there is or there are, relate it to a natural environment. In a sitting room, there are armchairs, small tables, a lamp, pictures on the walls. In a dining room, there is a big table, chairs, and etc. And now let's proceed to guided composition. So what is guided composition? As students advance, train them to create their own narrative or descriptive pieces because they will need them for letters, reports, etc. Here again, you have to limit them. The first essays and composition can therefore be simple sentences derived from single words, chairs, teacher, table, etc. Later, you produce the outline of a composition which students fill out. At the beginning, this may simply be the routine of getting up while practicing the habitual present. So, get up, 7 o'clock, bathroom, take a shower, brush teeth, bedroom, dress, breakfast, 7:30, leave the house, 8 o'clock. So, here is the simple example letter of Jean. Dear Jean, thanks for a letter. Glad you're well, etc. Just been to Naples, leave house 9 o'clock with father, taxi, terminus station, buy tickets, platform 6, get into a compartment, train leaves 9:45, look through window suburbs, green countryside, mountains, ticket collector, Read the newspaper. Two American tourists in compartment talk about America. They say suitcase fulls, arrive Naples, get out, say goodbye to Americans, must finish now, etc. Best wishes. You can widen the scope as your class progresses. For example, initiative is allowed in the above for what Americans said, what happened after the luggage filled, and how the letter begins and ends. So the guided composition exercises is language-based, with learners focusing on vocabulary development, reading comprehension, grammar, spelling, punctuation, and even oral ability, all of which culminate in writing. Small group instruction is the focus of guided composition. So that's all my report, and thank you for listening.
This topic is all about free composition. Free composition, this means euphoric stage where the student has mastered sufficient language, skills, and organization. According to Brown, in a early part of a relationship, you forgive everything in these early stages. But in a relation of euphoric stage, where the student has mastered and to be able to handle the writing in the early stage. The object is to practice their English for the additional knowledge and to enhance more in English. First, decide what secondary skills want to practice. Description, it is narrative or argument, letter writing. You may also have to teach how to construct actual compositions, or when we say actual compositions, it means makes notes and works out the structure with brief description. French and German, a country known in using writing composition. Most nationalities do not write compositions at school. If necessary, encourage the students to plan out a composition and go over it in a class. This means it's important to the students to plan out composition specifically to the class. Description of a home that will be divided up passively. Number 1, where it was. Number 2, the garden, neighboring houses and streets. Number 3, the entrance. Number 4, the sitting room. 5, the dining room. 6, the bedrooms. 7, overall impressions. In the case above that I have mentioned earlier, it might be tempting to write about what actually happened in this childhood home or in a family events. It is important for exams and writing reports where questions have to be answered precisely, so that the students will train to think clearly and concisely in English. That's all in free composition.
Good day, everyone. I will discuss to you the prezi and the correction in reading and writing practice. When telling a story, we want it to be short but concise. We don't need long detail. This is why we need summarizing. Prezi is a summary or a gist of a comprehensive passage that is supposed to cover all the details and important aspects of the passage and convey the summary with the use of minimal words. In short, prezi is a formal way of writing a shorter form of the given paragraph. So even though you have read and understood the prezi well, do not form your own opinions. You cannot insert your own remarks and criticism in writing a prezi. All prezis should have three C's in it. Number one is it should be clear, meaning is it to pursue, to understand, or is it to interpret. Number two is it should be concise, meaning it should express all the main point in just few words as possible. And number three, it should be complete, meaning it should have all the necessary or appropriate parts. And there are 6 steps to prezi writing. These are the reading, analyze, title, initial draft, revise, and the final copy. Let's learn each step one at a time. Step 1. Reading. Carefully read the passage several times and understand clearly its main theme or the general meaning. Step 2 is to analyze. Examine the passage detail to make sure the meaning of its sentence, then underline or highlight all the keywords or the key sentences. Then count the words in the passage. Step 3 is the title. Supply a short title that will express the subject or the main idea of the passage. Step 4 is the initial draft. While writing an initial draft, keep in mind some of the important points. First, write down all the important points in a sequential manner. Make sure to write it in an indirect speech. Try to shorten the passage by omitting. And then add nothing, make no comment, and do not correct any facts. Step 5. Revise or to edit. Here you need to consider some points in mind. Make sure the passage is 1/3 of the original passage. Then check the grammar, the spelling, and the punctuation errors. Step 6 is the final copy. Write out neatly the fair copy under the heading you selected. So these are the 6 steps you need to follow when writing a Prezi. Proceed to correction in reading and writing practice. There is little point in a student working away if they are not going to learn as much as possible from any mistakes they make. The reward for doing written work is the feeling that something is being learned. The most comprehensive method of correcting was suggested by H.A. Cartledge. In here, you divide up mistakes into categories and use abbreviations in the margin to indicate them. G for grammar, SP for spelling, WO for word order, P for punctuation, V for vocabulary, PR for prepositions, and lastly, VB for verb. You underline mistakes so that the student can still see what he or she originally wrote. At the end, you add up the errors under each category and list them and make some brief comments.